beside me is Chris Dovi. I am a business person here in the Fan District, and Chris is the executive director of Code VA. Would you like to tell the folks a little bit about Code VA?
No, I'm okay. Nonprofit organization in the city that does stuff. And then it used to be a newspaper reporter, covered city politics.
Right. Tonight, we're coming to you from the headquarters of Rocket Pop Media, a local fan small business located at the corner of Robinson and Main Streets.
And they have graciously provided both space as well as
technological assistance. Yeah,
exactly.
So tonight we welcome the two candidates. Would you like to talk to the two candidates about who they might be?
Sure. Tavarris, you want to go first, or Kathryn, do you want to go first?
Why don't you guys take a minute and introduce yourselves?
I can go first?
Sure. You logged in first. How's that?
Yeah, that's fair enough. So my name is Tavarris Spinks. I'm running for 2nd District City Council. I am a proud 5th generation Black Richmonder. I grew up poor in a working class household in the East End. I became the first member of my family to graduate from college. I graduated from VCU. I've lived in my home in the Fan for 12 years. And I also have a deep love for this city, but also have a vivid understanding of its flaws. There are too many hardworking people in Richmond who are struggling due to systemic inequality, underfunded schools, and a government that doesn't listen or prioritize our residents' day-to-day needs. So that's why I'm running to build a better Richmond that works for everyone.
Thank you very much. Kathryn.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Kathryn Jordan. I'm also running for City Council 2nd District, and I live here in the Fan with my kids. I grew up in the Richmond area. My dad taught at VCU. He chaired the history department. My mom was 1 credit short of getting her MFA from VCU and also taught at U of R. So I have a deep love for Richmond also, and I'm excited to be here as an adult, raising my kids after living in a number of other cities. So I also have experiences in other capital cities, other small towns, and I bring that with me in this role. So a little bit more about my background. My educational experience is, I'm a double Wahoo. My graduate degree is urban and environmental planning, and I've been deeply involved here in the Fan. So one of my first volunteer roles was chairing parks and trees for the FDA, followed by serving as president and then grants co-chair. And to the folks who are watching this after the fact on the FDA Facebook page, I ran that for a while, and I continue to do the FDA newsletter. Professionally, I worked in architecture and urban design in New York City, as well as in Durham, North Carolina, where I was assistant director for campus design and sustainability for Duke Medicine. So I helped oversee master plans for, there were 240 acres, over $700 million in new construction and renovations, school nursing, school medicine, clinics, hospitals. I know how to work with city departments. I know how to work with communities, and I would be very excited to do that on behalf of the 2nd, absolutely on behalf of the Fan. I loved representing the Fan neighborhoods down at the city, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Great.
And we are too.
And we're off. Chris? We're going to start with the first question, and I'll open it up if you don't mind.
Yeah, and I think maybe start with Kathryn since we let Tavarris open.
Sounds like a plan.
Go for it.
Okay, great. Kathryn, there has been a long-standing debate in our democracy that goes, as a city council member, you are elected by the people of the 2nd. However, you will be faced with issues that impact the entire city, or that may benefit another district over your own. How will you prioritize your decision-making when called upon that may indeed benefit another district over the 2nd?
Well, I mean, I think what's good for the city overall is not necessarily bad for the 2nd District, and certainly not bad for the Fan. When the city is faltering, then the districts are faltering. So I don't see that as mutually exclusive.
Tavarris, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, and I was asked this question recently, this past Monday, and it's a balance that one needs to strike, because I 100% agree that when you're elected to represent the people of your district. I think what some people forget, though, is that the 2nd District is quite diverse. The 2nd District has the Fan, of course, but it also contains parts of the Museum District, Scott's Addition, which is growing, Carver, Jackson Ward, and then neighborhoods in Northside, including Sherwood Park, Rosedale, and parts of Ginter Park. So between all of these areas, you have parts of, and then parts of downtown too, including Central Business District. So you have Central Business District, dense urban housing, including apartment buildings, and then areas with single family homes. So I think that when a policy comes up that might affect one area of the city over another, I generally think that these areas are not, it's not a zero-sum game. And it is important to remember that to get anything done on council, you need at least 5 votes, sometimes 6 or 7 for certain budget items or other decisions. So, you know, it's important to be a collaborative, you know, a collaborative leader in that space, if that makes sense. You know, so my approach to that is really like forging relationships with other council people. Sidewalks are an issue across the city. Lord knows potholes and roads are an issue across the city. You know, I think that council can come together and prioritize list of projects in each of their district and come to a common agreement. And that's what would have to happen if you want to get something done on a larger scale.
In all fairness, I'd like to tell Kathryn that as you are trying to scroll through your messages on your phone, your finger is showing up in the shot. So you might want to just...
Yeah, I'm sorry. My daughter uses this account, and I realized that I still had her name, Porter.
Oh.
So I was trying to change my name. I was not trying to disrespect the conversation.
Just want to let you know when this goes out over the air tomorrow. This is, yeah, okay.
But it's okay.
But you know, that brings up a very good
stuff
question.
like
Kathryn,
I wouldn't be.
you guys seem to agree, but then there's some wedge, if you will, of disagreement in the fact that, if I understood you correctly, Kathryn, you said that what is good for one part of the city is not necessarily good or bad for the fan. What we're trying to get at with this question is, if it does have a negative impact on the second district,
You'll occasionally,
whether it be any of the areas that were described earlier, how would you vote? Would you vote to represent the city, or would you? We drafted this question.
These occasionally come up with, like, so I guess a land use or a schools issue in particular. Seems like we'll have these things that become sort of this tension point where it's going to help say South Side Manchester or something, and why are we putting our, almost like the Henrico versus city or Chesterfield versus city taxation question. And these, you know, both of you answered very similarly on it, but we do see the tension happen, I think, quite frequently.
On the dais at city council, we've seen it for years.
Yeah, for years. And I guess, how do you really parse out what is your responsibility to your voters versus the responsibility you have for the larger city?
Kathryn?
Right. So the responsibility is to the people who voted you in, right? I mean, they've entrusted you with their vote, and they're hoping you'll represent their best interests. As Tavarris has said, we're an incredibly diverse district. I mean, set aside that we're a diverse city, we're a very diverse district. So, you know, I'm going to do my best to try and find consensus within the district. That's not always going to be possible. So you're going to have to try and weigh what is the majority opinion and what is really in the best interest long term. You know, notwithstanding certain like spikes in point of views, or whoever's loudest in the room, or who seems to have gotten traction with some sort of, you know, online, oh my gosh, what are those things? Everyone signs them. Petition.
Yeah.
Anyway, but when it comes to district to district, district to district, I guess what I was trying to say is, if Southside is struggling, then Richmond is also struggling, and second district is struggling. So, and I think we saw that full display down on Monument Avenue. People are struggling across the city. People are worried about their rent. They don't have work, and they're frustrated. So if the second district wants, you know, to have the best experience and the best quality of life, I think we should want those things for the whole city. That's what I was trying to get at with my answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris?
I
pose
can
the
read
second
next one.
question?
Sure, I can do that. So next question is, currently we have an Office of Community Wealth Building that has was founded during the Jones administration, and yet Richmond still has a poverty rate of 27%. What do we need to be doing differently, acknowledging the possibility that we will continue to suffer losses in the economy generally? And this really is sort of, I guess, that larger question of how do we move forward with some of these ideas that were at the nugget of what community wealth building is trying to accomplish? How do we support that, or what do we need to change about it?
I mean, we know that Thad Williamson really was the creator of this office in 2008, 9, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere
right?
in there. And it's evolved over time.
It's evolved. However, we still face a similar poverty number in the city as we did in 2008.
It's almost identical.
So that's really the question we've got for you. And I think Tavarris goes first this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah, so I should talk.
Yeah, I know. I want us to hold the conversation, but I also want to be fair. You know,
Tavarris, go.
Yeah, so I talked in the opening about my background. You know, growing up poor in the East End, the vector or method by which my family found a better life for us specifically was education. After a few years after I was born, or rather for few years, for the few years after I had been born, my mom was still working retail. You know, she was walking from the public housing or the Section 8 housing that we lived in. It was called Woodcroft and Fulton Bottom, technically. You know, even when she was pregnant with me, she was walking to the bus. But after I was born, you know, she worked retail, worked at chicken factories. And then at some point, I became old enough for daycare, and she put me in a city and federally subsidized daycare, and then also went to, at the time, ECPI, which helped her learn computer skills. And, you know, that's what made our family, like, long story short, she got a better job. We were able to move at least out of the subsidized housing that we're in, into a house, and it was a very small, modest house in Fulton. And that was our specific vector. And then she made sure, and my dad made sure, that also that I had a path to success. They didn't really know a lot about going to college, for example. And I basically at 18 was told, all right, you need to do something. You need to either go to college or go to school. And it took, for me, concerned teachers who were interested in my life and wanting to see me do well to like help me walk through the process of applying for college and for loans. So all that to say, I think that providing those sorts of opportunities sort of at the base level. When we actually talk about building wealth, what that means, at least for me, is often like a lot of Americans and the way our system is set up, a lot of wealth is tied up in your home. So, you know, there are a number of mitigations. I have a whole plan about how we can increase affordable housing, including home ownership in underserved communities. But basically that would be the goal, is to increase home ownership, make sure that the education opportunities are there and other support services so that people can find other opportunities. And then also I would say, you know, making sure that the climate in Richmond is conducive for folks forming small businesses.
Would you like us to reread the question, Kathryn?
Yeah, that was too long. I'm sorry.
It's a pretty deep question. It's a pretty deep question.
It is, and you know, kind of what we're trying to get to the heart of too with this particular question, and the I guess what, again, conversation around it is, when you look at wealth building, a lot of what its promise was very similar to what already was you know, decades old promise of RHA, which does have a component that's supposed to be moving people from poverty into you know, towards wealth, or towards at least stability and improved lifestyles. And it's something that's been very difficult to make certain that those transitions happen. So are there things that we can change about, you know, Tavarris was talking a lot about, I guess, you know, ECPI is a private company, or was, and some of these things, how does the city actually facilitate those things? How do we make sure that those resources are funneled to the people who need them?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So one of the things you mentioned, that there hasn't been real progress on the poverty rate here. right? So the other thing that there has not been real progress on are wages. So wages have been stagnant for decades. So I think that's a key component of this. I'm a proponent of living wage. I think the city could lead by example on that, try and encourage our corporate
I'm
partners.
sorry, what is a
certainly-
living wage?
Living wage, I think.
Oh, for our viewers? Yes.
You're not
So,
running,
you know-
she is.
Thank you. So, it depends on where you are, what the cost of living is. Those things are factored in. Some places that might be 15, but so it depends on where you are living, like when you're looking at that term nationally.
Right.
So what the city could be doing is find out what is the living wage here in Richmond? What can we encourage our corporate partners to do as well as VCU? And then more practically, you could talk about project labor agreements on city projects so that we are paying a fair wage there as well, that you're hiring locally. And then also the unions have a lot of great training programs where they bring people up into the middle class. So that would be a whole nother area where the city could look at partnering more and making sure that they are bringing in union partners. And we're going to have a lot of construction and a lot of development. So certainly the city is in a position to encourage that. And then I would say, Tavarris touched on this, access to childcare is really fundamental. We have a lot of single family homes that, are moms and they don't have access to childcare. So I believe the Biden plan, and Charlie, you can chime in on this if you want, because I know you're in deep in that campaign and probably know all of his platforms, but it sounds like there could be funding coming from that the city could apply for to help our residents, because that's a huge problem that holds back families when you're talking about generational wealth. Like you can't even go to work because you can't afford the childcare. So how are you going to get ahead? And then generational wealth, I think also you're looking at your ability to actually buy a home, not just be a renter. Like home ownership really is critical, and the redlining, unfortunately, like cities across the country is part of our history, and it has held back folks from being able to move forward. So I think there are a lot of strategies. The good news is Richmond has a lot of terrific partners who are focused on this. And I think there is increased awareness that it's a problem here. So I'm hoping that we would make some progress on it.
Just to follow up, and we've got about a minute left on this section. It's a yes or no. If you look at the budgetary expenditures into the Office of Community Wealth Building, do you think it's been successful? Tavarris?
That's a great question. I have to say from a pure metric standpoint, no. But I have liked what I've seen from that office when it comes to workforce development, et cetera. But like, I'm all about numbers, and if you can measure success, and we know the poverty rate, then it hasn't been successful. But I know that they're trying.
Kathryn? Psych.
I think it's relative. For the people that office has helped, yes, it's been a success. And I don't think you can discount, the families that they have helped along their path. Is it achieving as much as it could? Honestly, I'm not as familiar with their budget to really, I would say, give you a definitive answer.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our third question now. When I say we, I mean you and I and you, except not him.
Okay.
We live in the second district, which until recently was also home to statuary that were a focal point for division locally as well as nationally. The statues are gone. What special responsibilities rest with the winner of this race in particular, in leading or facilitating conversations to help us heal locally and nationally, both physically and philosophically? Kathryn?
Yes, thank you. I think that starts with a community-driven process for what Monument Avenue is going to look like. That's where most of the statuary is, correct? There are obviously others, the Columbus statue, AP Hill, which is, still to be dealt with, and Lee statue. the 19th, right? We'll find a little bit more, October 19th, hopefully, about that, the fate of that. So whoever the next city council person is needs to lead a community-wide process that isn't just about the people who live most proximate to it. Because this, as Charlie, you're right, this isn't just about the fan, it's citywide, and you know, we're the capital city. So there are a lot of people who are interested in this. I think we have a real opportunity. This can be a preamble for talking about a lot of issues that the city hasn't wanted to talk about in the past. So hopefully it'll be a process that people can have thoughtful, constructive conversations, know that these conversations are going to actually result in something, unlike the Monument Avenue Commission, which, you know, unfortunately, once it concluded, there was no action based on it. There just wasn't the political will. So people going into this, I think, will at least know something is going to happen from the process, because people are ready to turn the page. There's going to be something new on Monument Avenue, and it has the opportunity to be something fantastic that people can be excited about, that can be a positive headline for the city, that can create new conversations, a new narrative, a new tourism draw. And I think it's gonna be terrific. So my responsibility would be making sure that people have access to participating, making sure that the parameters are clear, and that it's executed, you know, to the top level of finish. We want to be proud when it's done. We want to feel like we accomplished something that's going to be lasting and positive.
Tavarris?
Yeah, so, and so the question was about the responsibility of the council person for the physical space, and then also sort of I forget the second part of that question.
Kind of the curating the conversation, because there is one to be had.
Right. I mean, you both are running to be a leader in this area. And this area happens to contain the statuary formerly known as statuary.
Right.
And so what we're asking is, how do you
frankly,
lead
too,
on this issue?
Yeah.
Not only from where it was, but going forward.
And knowing too.
And both physically and philosophically. That's why we constructed this question the way we did. So we could talk about what's going to be there, not personally in your opinion, unless you want to give it to us, but how do you lead that conversation both physically and philosophically?
And knowing too that often these types of conversations, it is easier to let them go. And you as a thought leader in the second district, it becomes incumbent to some extent on you to kind of help to keep that conversation going, or to lead it where it needs to go, or where you want it to go. I guess it's you. So where do you take it?
So now it is you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I guess I'll take the philosophically portion first. You know, growing up, I didn't actually come down, especially to Monument Avenue at all until about middle school. I think I went on a middle school trip to the VMFA, and the bus went down Monument, and I was like, oh, what's all this? And, you know, my history teacher, explained what the statues were, et cetera. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I asked my mom about it, and she said, she's like, I don't really have a lot of reason to go down there, and I avoid the area. Not that she was necessarily shielding me from Confederate imagery, but it was definitely a thing that sort of was ingrained in her. And I realize in hindsight that those statues weren't just there to honor Confederate soldiers, but also like they were there for me. They were there to remind us who Richmond, who America is for. Fortunately, our understanding of those things has changed, or at least for the most part, I think it's changed. But so that aspect of it, like the sort of when the context of when they were put in, and who they were for, and who they were there to remind who has power. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And Kathryn and I both live very close to these statues. So it's something I think about a lot in that space. And this is also why kind of the slogan of my campaign is build a Richmond for everybody. Because our built environment, and so now this is getting sort of into the physical space, our built environment also reflects some of these elements. Kathryn mentioned redlining before, obviously the physical presence of the statues, but the conversation cannot exist without also including the other symbols and systems that were in place to remind us and to keep us in a certain place. So how do you lead that conversation? I'd like to think of myself as a collaborative person, and I try to listen to as many sides as possible. I think it is incumbent upon the city council person of the 2nd District to help facilitate that conversation, but not necessarily to lead or guide it. And that's important. It's important because, again, my experience, I have a very specific experience growing up, and I feel like I have a good handle on Black Richmond and white like the white like 2nd District and all others, etc. But I don't know everything, and I don't know every point of view. So it's important in really in any decision making, especially to listen, and then to take that input and then incorporate it into whatever decision that you'll make. And so that's my strategy. And then just quickly, I would say that the city has a public arts commission, and we do have empty pedestals right now. I think it would make a lot of sense to use the existing structure to help facilitate a community conversation to actually come up with a plan for what the physical environment for Monument Avenue should look like, and the rest of the city as well. When it comes to that. That might have been too long. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
No, that was great. I just wanted to add one point.
Yeah.
Just continuing on that train of thought. I have heard a lot of people say that they would love to see a temporary solution while we come up with whatever the long-term plan is.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of value in that. So I just want that to be on people's radar, that I would be supportive of a temporary, sort of like get it back to a palette. And then then there's a palette we're moving from for the long-term solution. Because it could take a while to work through this public process.
And it's sort of what's happened organically, so to speak. You're talking about helping to facilitate how it's being used as that palette, I guess, right?
Who is it, Chris, that's, is it the Mellon Foundation that is saying they'll put
Yes.
$250 million? Do you think that's a
Oh,
good
yeah.
use of funding?
Are they
Yes,
better
the
ways-
Andrew
This
Mellon
question is for
Foundation.
both of you.
Yeah.
Do you think the $250
Okay.
million that the Mellon Foundation has proposed to fund rethinking and reimagining these former statuary, do you think that's a good use of funds? Because I've seen on social media, are you kidding me? $250 million on how? Come on. So that's a good question. What do you guys think?
Here's the thing. There is trillions of private dollars out there in the country. And each foundation has its own parameters for what they want to fund. I used to do fundraising. That was one of my first jobs back when I was a lot younger. And so this is their agenda. You can't go back to them and say, no, we don't want this. This is what they have rolled out. And I think the city would be foolish not to say, hi, we noticed that you used our picture with this article, and we think we would be an amazing recipient. So I think that Richmond should be all over that. Yes, do we need school funds? 100%. Go after the foundations that support schools for those requests.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I was talking about I think building more sidewalks and realizing there's obviously very real budgetary constraints. And then someone said to me, a resident said, "Oh, just shake the money tree." I was like, "Oh, excuse me, there's a money tree. Please point me if you can draw me a map." But this sounds like a money tree. So my only caution is that I would. Sometimes these dollars come with strings, or even like an expedited timetable. And a lot of times in Richmond, if there's money out there, but it has to be used in X number of years or months, that we end up with a half-baked project that didn't get the right input, et cetera. So I'd want to make sure that if we were even applying for this money, that we would have enough time to figure out to figure what we'd want to do with it.
We've certainly seen that.
Now, Chris and I worked very diligently on this last question. We reached out to a few folks.
Last question?
Right?
This next question is very important. We reached out to a few folks, and we selected one
Well, wait a minute,
specific
hold on.
question.
She's asking next question. Do we have more to elaborate on with that one?
Oh,
we don't want to move
do you
on.
have more? I apologize.
Yeah, we don't want to move on.
No, I
She
thought
said
you said
last
last.
question. Yeah.
He did say last.
This
No,
seems
I
like
said
it's
no.
flown
Oh,
by.
look at the
minute.
time. We got to get out of here.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, I've got plenty of time, guys.
All
Okay.
right, so the
great.
next question
So I'm comfortable.
is one from the crowd. It's from
Okay.
Tim in North Side.
Tim in the north
In
side. And this is a Tim in the
In
north
the North
side.
Side. One of the key elements of Richmond's success in its future will be the strength of its public schools. While RPS is managed by an independently elected school board, the mayor and city council play a huge role in the success of our schools. What will you do if elected to make RPS success a top priority? And I want to add to that a little bit. You guys are the budgetary strings. So,
And Tim, Chris,
Tim, you can call me
who
Tim.
asked that
Somebody
question?
call me Tim.
Who asked that question?
Tim
In
the
the
North Side.
north side.
The north side.
Some branding there.
Right? Is that? I think I went first last
I
time.
believe-
guess maybe
I believe
think
Tavarris
it
goes
was
first this
Tavarris,
time,
is it?
yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Oh, I go first? Okay. Okay. Fair enough. So
Please answer.
Hi, Tim.
Please answer Tim, Tavarris.
I was about to until you interrupted me, Charlie. Jeez Louise.
That's what we do.
Hi, Tim. Tavarris here. I 100% agree with you that the basis of that success for Richmond will depend in large part on public schools. I talked a little bit about the education, a little bit about how education has had an amazing effect on my personal family story, and I want that for all of Richmonders. So while school board does policy, the council does approve the budget, and like the initiative recently to build more schools was a administration and council driven initiative that required votes. So long story short on that for me is that I want to ensure that Richmond public schools are fully funded, and when I say fully funded, I don't mean just funding their request. I mean working with them to figure out what are the full needs, because technically Richmond City schools are fully funded now, but we still have issues with facilities and teacher retention and many other areas. So I'd love for the school board to really present, or rather the superintendent to present a budget. Okay, how much would it really cost? Like if money was no issue, what would that budget look like? And then sort of paring down from there. So I think that's the best approach. I think that facilities, especially, council has the largest say on because it's highly tied to budget issues. Making sure that our kids can learn in environments that are not where ceiling tiles aren't falling on their heads. So I can say more there, but I think I should let Kathryn get in. Sorry.
Kathryn,
Doors open.
answering Tim
Great.
from Northside.
Thank you. And the question was, how does city council work with the school board to ensure success for our students in schools?
Essentially,
Is that correct?
yeah.
But the crux, the main question was the last sentence. What will you do if elected to make RPS success a top priority?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh.
Yes. So this was one of the main reasons that I wanted to run for city council and how I started following city council in the first place. It was going down to listen to the budget sessions and just being really struck by the broad consensus across the city that this was the top priority. There were people lined up in the aisles, for hours wanting to do public comment, passionate, in tears, begging. And these were people that didn't even have kids. Some of them were just graduated from BCU, others were grandparents, and they were just fed up and tired. So I was very inspired by that passion, and I saw it. I saw the need, and I wanted to be more involved in trying to craft a solution. So one, I would just say, I come from a sense of urgency. I've seen it as a parent. I've seen the problems. I've been down in the committee meetings. I've listened to school board sessions. So I feel informed and passionate about it. And how do we make it a priority? We keep encouraging all of our residents to speak up on the issue, first of all, because the more they speak up on it, the more likely it's going to remain a budgetary priority. And that's one of the big parts. Also, we need more help from the state. And everybody who follows schools knows this. For decades, we have not been getting our fair shake from the composite index. So continuing to push our elected officials, building alliances across the state with other localities that are not getting their fair shake either. Like, who can we team up with? You know, to go to the General Assembly and say, look, this isn't just a Richmond issue. The composite index is fundamentally flawed and has got to be changed. So I would say that's part of the equation. But if we want our schools to succeed, we want better student outcomes, we need to have better parent outcomes. So as a city council member, we've got to focus on the before school and after school realities of our students. And it's like, what, 80% of our students are low income. Do they have access to stable housing, food security? You know, do their parents have access to transportation for better jobs, for the continuing education that can raise people up into a better circumstance? So, you know, really looking at the social issues that surround our students, partnering with the school board, with our teacher groups. You know, we've got a lot of terrific advocacy groups and a lot of terrific other organizations like Code VA. So like we have partners that want to come in and do great work, and we need to make sure we enable that. And I'm sorry, this is the last thing I'll say about it. It's great to get the new buildings. Oh, okay, great. So
No, he's not.
it's great to get the new buildings, and they're much needed because the facilities are, you know, antiquated and in some cases just flat out, you know, dangerous when you look at mold and air quality. But it's the people inside those buildings that make a difference in the kids' lives. So are we paying our teachers enough? No, we know we're not. We keep losing them to the counties. Our state is one of the worst teacher pay states. And then our city within a state where we don't pay teachers enough lags even further behind. So I'm very committed to trying to raise our teacher pay and also to diversify our teacher base. We have to have more male teachers of color, to be leaders and mentors. You know, the data is out there that we get better outcomes. People, you know, the students feel more encouraged. And so there are a lot of things we could be doing. And I would be very passionate about partnering with our advocates to make sure that we are making progress. Because did anyone see the most recent report on graduation rates? It's not good. Not good.
Why don't you illuminate us as to those numbers? And quickly,
okay, so apparently
move on to the next question.
Yeah, well,
okay, sorry.
But go ahead. Sorry, he wants to
I was
illuminate.
going to say September 30th, a report came out on September 30th saying that we were like at the bottom of the state. I mean, just
We tend towards
way down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And retention has been very difficult during COVID as well. Redirecting a little bit, you talked about something, and
Sure.
I think Tavarris sort of hinted at it as well, but you addressed it a little more directly. Is these it's not just community partnerships, but also the different departments within the city oftentimes have different services that are part of the continuum of education. So, for instance, social services really is a part of making sure of a child's success in education. How do we create, or I guess maybe not create, how do we unsilo those things so that they're working more collaboratively and closely together? We've tried doing some of that with, say, Parks and Rec in schools, but it still remains somewhat siloed. What can city council do to sort of open up those channels? Are there things that you think council has as tools that could be used for that? And either one of
I
you.
mean, this would just be a guess, but every time I talk to a group about what's holding them back, it sounds like part of the problem is in the city attorney's office. Like there's like a real aversion to risk. So I mean, I'm just guessing that maybe that would be part of it.
Interesting.
But trying to find the solution would be like,
Yeah.
why isn't it working? Talking to the social service groups and saying, well, why, you know, are you having trouble? How can we make it easier?
Yeah.
Trying to, you know, run those problems down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. This is something I think about a lot because, I may have mentioned, but I had free and reduced lunch all through middle school and elementary school and most of high school as well, I think. But so like the sort of wraparound services, a lot of what makes education difficult is home life. Richmond has done an amazing job making sure that there is availability for food, for example, but there are still kids who go hungry. in the city. That is absolutely a thing. You know, and stabilizing home life. And so then, so in that space, I would say, you know, we need more federal help all around, but there are things the city can do. And especially, Chris, like you mentioned, working with third-party organizations and nonprofits, we have a lot of passionate folks and organizations in the city. When it comes to coordinating with, you know, with the schools themselves, I actually get a little nervous. Like I don't want to speak out of turn, but like, you know, privacy, like HIPAA, like I work in healthcare insurance, so like stuff like that sort of always makes me nervous when we're talking about shared services, because often that means shared data. But I think as much as possible, making parents and guardians aware of other offerings to kids. One of the ways that we can do that is making sure that we have more counselors in schools. Everything I mentioned earlier can be well, mitigated is maybe not the right word, but can be ameliorated with school counseling. Like if there's difficult home life, we have more counselors available to talk and treat our children, and also connect with parents and guardians, because they would have the authority to with other services. I think that makes the most sense, and I'm always open to ideas in this space, and working, of course, with school board and community leaders.
I think we're on to our next question now.
Yeah, we are. I'm wondering whether we ought to drop 5 and go on to 6.
Sure.
If we can
come back to this one.
Yeah, we can come back to
Okay.
that one. Okay.
Go for it.
Seemingly, during every mayor's tenure, either the best developer on the planet or a snake oil salesman, depending on how you see it or who you ask,
I know where it's going.
shows up, and said mayor takes their turn trying to jump the shark. The common thread is that all these large-scale developments create division in our city. Question: what is the city council person's role in the due diligence process? How do we, or do we in fact, set ground rules for what we as a community will entertain? Who goes first?
I think it's Kathryn.
It's
Pick
Kathryn.
'em up. Yeah. Well, hopefully Richmond 300 will help with that a little bit. We're about to adopt a new master plan that should have some parameters for what the city wants to see happen. And then I would just say we've got to have a better process for our available properties. You know, before someone comes proactively with the unsolicited bid, you know, what do we want to see on that site? And are we asking surrounding neighborhoods, what do they envision for it? What are our priorities? Is it just the highest and best use, you know, who's going to pay the most for that site for us? No, we've got to have longer term goals than that. So working with the community around our available properties that are those large project sites, and saying, you know, what does the city need? What are we looking for? And trying to be a little bit more proactive and actually creating a process that attracts more than one person. So I think going from a reactive stance to one where we're actually soliciting what we want, and what we want is based on on conversations that were in the community to come up with these goals. Doing that is going to be a challenge for the city, because I feel like we're understaffed, we're overworked, and we're really constantly in a reactive mode where, you know, that's great if you're the developer and you've got, you know, what you want. Here's a city doesn't really, unfortunately, have the opportunity to come up with their own planning process, and you can sort of dive in there and say, look, I've got this great plan. You should really consider it, versus the city knowing what they want to do with those properties and seeking the partners.
Yeah, I would. So this is one of the reasons I'm actually running for office, and it isn't just specifically about Navy Hill, because I feel like, and like a lot of other Richmonders, and especially since we've gone to strong mayor, you know, I feel like we keep getting hit with this exact same thing, which is basically the premise of the question. Before it was a Shaco Stadium, then a Shaco Stadium and or a Shaco development and Boulevard Stadium, and now then it's Navy Hill, like each, right. And then, you know, and one thing that can be frustrating about thinking in Richmond is like often folks think about 6th Street Marketplace and, you know, bring that up as a, oh, this is going to be another 6th Street Marketplace. You know, it's not necessarily wrong though. Like we, you know, like I believe that we can and should do big things. And I want to emphasize that we can, but we have to go through the right process. And what the right process is an open, transparent process that lays out what the expectations are of a developer and what the benefits should be for the surrounding community and the city as a whole. So what that looks like is if you want to sell city land and also build an amenity like a stadium or an arena, then you put out an RFP stating RFP means request for proposal. You basically, and this is standard public procurement process. I work in healthcare IT for Medicaid and Medicare. We respond to RFPs all the time, and we win a lot of them. But that being said, you know, you put out a statement saying, okay, we want to build a 16,000 square foot arena or 16,000 seat arena in this area. You also have to provide opportunity for small women-owned, small businesses, small women, minority owned. Good Lord, I'm sorry.
You got it. You got it.
Tough one. Too many.
We know what you're talking
And it
about.
doesn't rhyme.
Help me, Lord.
It doesn't rhyme.
We
Right.
get you, man. You're good.
Right. So you put all of this out front. You know, you have a timeline, say, okay, submit your proposals. And then, you know, ideally you get more than 3 proposals back, but you pare down and then you ask for more concessions and you deal directly with them. This happens in the corporate world all the time. I'm not saying everything needs to be run like a corporation, but this is a best practice. So you do that, and then you also spell out, okay, then you present that plan to city council. Council's role in that, absolute oversight. I will make it, and I'm trying to make it as clear as possible that I'm not going to vote for anything. There's no such thing as an emergency building. There's such thing as emergency funding because we had a healthcare crisis. There's such thing as emergency funding because we have flooding in parts of the city. There's no such thing as urgency and emergency to build an arena. So on that space, you know, I'm putting it out there, like I will not vote for a project that doesn't follow these types of steps. I plan on actually just making a 1 or 2 page rubric saying, cool, administration, whoever's in power, this is what I need to see if you want a yes from me. And that, I mean, I think that's the way to do it. Like, because at the end of the day, for these projects, I think 6 or 7 council votes are required. So, you know, that's a steep hill, and because of that, council has a role and a say in how those projects are delivered and how city money or city backing for loans is spent.
Just a quick follow-up,
Yeah.
and it's a one-word follow-up, okay? Councilman Spinks, how do you vote on Navy Hill?
No.
Councilwoman Jordan, how do you vote on Navy Hill?
No.
All yours.
Okay, so I'm asking the next question.
You are indeed.
Okay, I can't wait. All right, and we're going to continue to skip the.
We are,
the one.
yes.
All right, so this is a fun throwaway. It's not a throwaway, though, I hope. It's a softball, exactly. What is the best attribute you bring to the job?
But it's not a softball.
When you are a city council person.
Yeah, it's not a softball because it's a serious question.
What do you got? Who's first? Where are we now?
It's Tavarris.
I believe
It's
it's
Tavarris. It is
Tavarris.
Tavarris. What do you bring?
Yeah, it would be akin to the same question that Saad El-Amin once asked when he was on council. Now, bring me what you got. Show me what you got. So, what is the best attribute you bring, counselor?
I'm trying to use you know what? Let's call it experience. And that, when I say experience, I'm talking about living in Richmond, knowing the city, and also with an eye, especially towards those on the margins, and realizing how many policies that the city enacts that affect people on the margins, especially. They affect everybody. For example, our water is way too expensive. Before you even turn on the tap, you're paying roughly like between $50 and $70, depending on the square footage of your plot, of your dwelling, for water, which is crazy. When folks live on fixed incomes in the city, we have a lot of folks who live on fixed incomes, including my grandma. So that's that experience, but also my experience for 12 years, I was a consumer protection and bankruptcy advocate. I've seen pay stubs literally thousands of pay stubs from Richmonders and other people in the metro area. And I can tell you, it is hard to get by in this city. And there are things, some of that is systemic because federal and state issues, but there's a lot of stuff that we can affect here on the ground. And then I would also say that the last 5 years I've spent as IT project managing, coming up with software solutions for nurses who are treating folks with Medicare and Medicaid. I think a lot of what's wrong in the city can be fixed with the right technology solutions. We talked about prior mayors, the technology implementation, which I believe was in 2011 for the system that's called Rapids, where they keep track of payroll, PTO. As I understand it, tax bills are supposed to go in there. It was supposed to be an all-encompassing finance system. And ever since that system went live, at least until the last 2 years, the city has been late on audits. And even now, we're finding, like in May, there's still accounts that were sitting with money in them. And I think the city auditor back in May said that there was about $2 million sitting in about 30 or 35 different accounts. I don't remember the exact numbers. There's software solutions for this. Like it needs training, etc. But that sort of experience.
Kathryn, self-superlative time.
Well, Tavarris stole mine.
I like
I
that.
was going to say experience working with the city. So I will take a different angle and I will say getting things done. The very first thing I did in the fan was serve as field and grounds chair for Fox. And I don't know if people remember the broken playground equipment. This is endemic across the city. So, like rusty bolts, broken plastic, the padding underneath the equipment was not cushioning anymore. Anyway, I did not give up an inch until that stuff got fixed. And it was a great learning process. They went out and taped the whole thing off. It's done. You can't play on the playground. It's definitely dangerous. And then weeks go by, nothing gets changed. Like the tape kind of starts to fall off. The wheel starts to, dampen, and the kids are just playing on it again. So I found a different angle. I went to the risk assessment officer at the city and I said, I think I heard someone broke their arm and there were all these open tickets. So I don't know, maybe it's time for you to fix this broken equipment. And I just kept following up and doggedly following up until that playground equipment got fixed. And then on the Green City Commission, I'm in my second term there. I was a Dwight Jones appointee, and I built a coalition to get a net zero resolution passed. That is to take our commitment to decarbonizing to 100% by 2050. And I did that by building a coalition, working through the city administration, making sure I worked with the sustainability office. All the LAs, the liaisons to the council members knew what it was. They were briefed in advance. It sailed through as a consent agenda item. I think people were tired of the drama. People understood what it was. There was support for it. It was the right thing. And it went through as a consent agenda item. I also got things done at the state level. I was part of the VA Ratify ERA team, which got the Equal Rights Amendment ratified here in Virginia in January. Back when the year started off great, and we thought 2020 was gonna be the best year ever. So we did that also by building a coalition across the state with allied partners, putting pressure on where we found the pressure points and where we couldn't budge somebody. You worked a different angle or you worked to get someone else elected. So I've got experience up and down the level with different departments, not just within the city, but within the state and different allies that I would be calling on to get things done for Richmonders and to get things done for the second district.
So that was not a throwaway question at all. I feel like we
No, I was hoping it would bring about that.
create like the Wonder Tower.
And given that, I think that the last question can go away and we can go back to this because we basically got the answers.
Okay.
Last question.
I was gonna.
Oh, please. No, I'm so sorry.
No, I forgot.
Now you need to provide a superlative about Kathryn, and then Kathryn.
No, please. No. You say
Wonderful.
something nice about your opponent.
Don't do that.
Yeah, that classic. I'm happy to.
ahead,
No, but Oh yeah, so I was going to say, I forgot to mention that I did serve as a legislative aide to Minority Leader Frank Hall in the General Assembly. So like I've dealt with the state budget, et cetera, and I've kept up citizen lobbying at the General Assembly for LGBTQ issues, housing discrimination, voting. Oh, right. Sorry, I was a winning plaintiff in the Supreme Court case for that challenged racially gerrymandered districts here in the Commonwealth. I've spoken to council before. The first time I went to council, I spoke protesting an increase in fees for tow companies who were overcharging. I think this was 2009. They were overcharging folks from towing cars from city property. I went down. Yeah. Yeah.
They're not elected.
So,
they can't do anything for you yet.
Can you guys help me with this?
Stop. Just stop.
So most of my focus has been on marginalized, underserved communities, et cetera. So that's sort of been my space. Sorry.
All right, Kathryn, did you want to add anything about you?
I think we have 3 minutes left, and you had one more question.
Okay, we do have.
I mean, I could.
We got
but,
one more
you know.
question. This
All right.
one, this one,
You might.
we talked about teachers earlier, and that's one profession that serves our community. And here's the firecracker. I'm going to light it and throw it in the room and see what you guys do with it.
I'll sit over here.
Yeah, right. Where do you stand on the statement, defund the police?
I think I'm up first. Okay. Yes. I think that term has really been become so toxic. You can't even use it without playing into a narrative that's not constructive. So if you want to talk about my stance on public safety, I will say that there are definitely areas that we could look at, are our dollars being used effectively? So I'm in favor of a lot of the things that are going through special session right now, and I think are going to be signed by the governor. Although I did hear that they extended session and they have to go back tomorrow at 4 p.m. So there's a lot hanging out there that hopefully is going to get taken care of at the state level. And where it's not, then that's for the city council to pick up. I am in favor of the Citizen Oversight Committee with subpoena power. I have, publicly
You are
said
in
I'm
favor of
against.
subpoena power. I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to get that
Yes.
on the record. You are in favor of subpoena
Yeah.
power for a citizen review panel?
Yes, and I've said, I think Tavarris and I have both filled out 1,000 questionnaires by now, and this has been a question on every single one of them. But I also think I'm not for abolishing the police. The police and our firefighters and our EMS, our first responders are critical parts of our city's function. And I value them, I do. Is there room for improvement? Yes. I think there were valid concerns that were highlighted by the police brutality and the murders that we've seen, brought into the forefront this year. So I'm hopeful that as difficult as these conversations have been, that we're actually going to have some constructive results from it. Because I do think, what we're seeing is people want to be engaged in the process, right? About who's overseeing them, what their public safety realm is. So where do I stand? Does there need to be reform? Yes. Does the police department need to go away? No. Do they need more support? Yes. Actually, they're not paid just like the teachers. They're underpaid. We train them for 2 weeks, which is an expedited training schedule that Chief Durham advocated for because we had all these vacancies. And so they get through this expedited training and then they get hired away by the counties, and we end up with people coming from the counties in, is my understanding, having talked to people in the department. So, and they want more training, and they would like to have health professionals, teamed up with them. We used to have a second responder program. When the grant funding ran out, the city didn't re-up that. Now the Marcus Alert might be the fix to that. I guess we're going to see, what happens with city council and if they get that through or not before either Tavarris or I are on it. But I guess that would be my response, that yes, there needs to be change. Look at funding some of the more upstream issues also. I think we all talked about this during the session. You know, there are a lot of Richmonders struggling. You don't have 25% poverty and not have crime. So how do we get everyone in our city living a better quality of life? I think that would go really far towards addressing some of what our public safety team is forced to deal with, that they didn't necessarily want, you know, to be on their plate.
Tavarris?
Yeah, so I think the question was, where do I stand on that statement? So first, I have to give some backstory, I guess, which is that, you know, folks who say defund or even abolish the police, this is coming from, at least in my own personal experience, but also, you know, just from reading accounts and reading a lot of the philosophy and thought behind these movements, you know, and then speaking for myself, you know, yeah, brass tacks, I've knocked on thousands of doors for Democrats across the Commonwealth, you know, in Richmond, Chesterfield, Henrico, Northern Virginia, Tidewater, Martinsville, Danville, and there's something that I always have to do because it was taught to me that, well, first of all, my mom didn't like me doing this at all because she feared for my life, but also she's, you know, I was taught to basically wear a canvassing costume. And what that means is, I put my VCU hat on, you know, I wore khakis and a collared shirt, even if it was the middle of July, because I didn't want to have a negative interaction, mainly with police. There's also a fear for like just general people, but like the police. And I've been stopped many times, you know, less in Richmond, to truth be told, but I've been stopped many times knocking on doors for Democrats trying to get people to vote, asking what folks, what are you doing? What are you doing here? You know, and, you know, I just keep to my mission, and I do it because I have faith and hope that we can make a better country. Now I say all of that because when you hear someone say that they want to defund or abolish the police, that is, I mean, speaking to my own personal experience, coming from a place of anger, of sometimes despair and sadness and just fatigue, especially over the last several years, because part of the fatigue is not that we're seeing violence or that we're seeing unarmed citizens, especially getting killed by police. But part of it is that we have been saying, when I say we, I mean Black folks and people of color, have been singing this song for years. And now it seems like folks are only listening because, you know, we have proof now, which is great, like that seeing this change. So I say, again, I say all of that to say that, you know, there's a range of thought on the defund the police space. Some people call for total abolishment, and then some folks, reform. You know, I'm sort of in the middle of that, which means that we need to look at what we're asking our police to do. There is a consensus that, welfare checks, mental health checks, responding to certain types of disputes that may not necessarily have violence. Like the police don't necessarily want to be doing this. If you ask them, they'll say they don't want to be doing this. They want to be stopping crime or solving crime. So I think it's important to look at the number of hours our police are spending with calls and even traffic stops. You know, like police have the ability to write tickets, but we don't ask them to patrol and enforce the parking permits. We have a separate service for that. And I think it makes a lot of sense to look and reimagine like what public safety looks like in the city, what we want it to be, and then try to make it happen. So yeah, I think it's possible to shift money around to do that. But even if you defund, you're going to have to provide more funding elsewhere in addition to start any sort of new service. I mentioned school counselors earlier, but mental health professionals and social workers, they should be paid a living, not above a living wage. These are folks with master's degrees. They should be well paid, trained professionals. I also believe that police should be well trained professionals as well. So that's my approach.
Okay. Well, I think we've run out of time.
Yeah.
I want to thank both of you and wish you all the best of luck going forward. We have 19 days till Election Day, I believe it is, at the recording of this. And I know how you feel. I did it twice.
You're gonna make it. You guys
You both said you wanted to do this.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. I say too.
Yeah.
The second district is incredibly lucky. Both of you are amazing candidates. And amazing people. And I hope, again, your neighbors and friends hopefully you can rely on one another regardless of who the ultimately winning candidate is, for advice, for help, for what everybody needs.
Right.
Another
I'd like to
perspective.
close out by just saying that if you are watching this stream either on YouTube or Facebook, please, if you live in the Fan District, please join the Fan District Association by going to their website and joining. It's quite a great group of individuals who put themselves forward on the board and look at issues such as zoning, trash, trees, all sorts of things that impact our neighborhoods here in the Fan District. Also like to thank Scott Dickens and Rocket Pop Media for opening their home
Who
to
made a
us
brief appearance
this
earlier,
evening,
if anybody caught
and allowing us to record this session here. Again, congratulations on your decision to run for public office. We laud you both for it. We wish you the best of luck going forward, and have a lovely evening. And
it is a lovely.
we'd like to remind everybody to go vote. Thank you very much.
Vote. Thank you, and thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Now, awkward sign-off time.
No, don't sign off yet.
Yeah.
No, she signed off,
Oh, wait.
didn't she?
No.
Bye,
See you?
Tavarris. Yeah, she's gone.
Bye, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks.
And we're done.
And we're out.